Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, I just want to say thank you everybody for coming today. Should be a fun day. I'm Matt Kiernan, by the way. I work with Pharmaca, and we host these type of events where we just try to get people together from industry. You'll notice there's no vendors or anybody trying to sell you anything in the hallway. We basically try to provide a service to the pharmaceutical industry where you can come to a conference. I think it was, what was it, $25, $30 to attend, pretty cheap, wasn't $2 grand. So what we try to do is, we know everybody's travel budgets and budgets for conferences are low or non-existent. So we try to provide this service where we can still get a group of people together. It's good to get away from work and see what the industry is doing. So if I could ask a favor in return for doing this, if you could tell your colleagues about some of the events we have, that would be great. We certainly don't make any money on this, we lose money. But you know, we very much enjoy when we get a group of people together, we share ideas and talk about what they're doing. Very beneficial. I think there's too little of that going on in the industry these days. So I really appreciate if you could share it with your colleagues, one. Two is when you're here, I really appreciate also help each other out. I know we're working for different companies, but you know what? We got a lot of the same challenges. So, you know, I don't expect you to divulge any, secrets about your company where I could go out and go to Yahoo Finance or wherever and start trading some stocks to make some money. It's not like getting those kind of secrets, but I think we're going to run into a lot of the same challenges with data visualization, organizational stuff, whatever. Help each other out while we're here, okay? Introduce yourself, get business cards. We're going to leave long breaks. We're going to have a while at the end. We're going to talk, just open forum or just hang out and network. To me, that's as important, if not more important, than the actual presentations themselves. So anyway, thanks for making it here. I'm going to go through a couple background slides here, just real quick. I know you can't read this, but I'm going to go through and just talk about who Pharmaca is. We are a consulting services company, and we also have products as well. Some, people like to pigeonhole us as a service company, product company. We're basically both, but essentially what we do is we provide pain relief for the pharmaceutical industry. You're like, that's kind of a funny sounding statement there. I mean, what does that mean? Well, we provide pain relief in three ways. You look at the landscape of the industry, regulations, mergers, all that stuff. We're being asked to do more and more with less resources, right? And for us as a consulting company, we try to provide pain relief around those areas. A lot of people are just, have a lot of pressure at work. So three ways in which we do that is, one is we provide experts in the pharmaceutical industry. The only thing we do is the pharmaceutical industry, no other industry, so you get experts. Number two, we like to say is we're not those typical consultants. We're not arrogant, obnoxious consultants, down to earth people. Very much you can relate to. We're there to help you. So a lot of times when we finish up projects and we say to clients, what do you like about the work in terms of the project? Most of the time the positive feedback we get is on our people. And then the third thing is we get things done. So we're not just going to be there creating PowerPoint slides, for example, and charging a lot of money. We actually roll up our sleeves and get the work done. So even another way of saying it, our core values: work hard, have fun, be great. So it's really as simple as that. So in terms of the subject matter expertise, just some of them listed right here above the icons here, whether it be clinical drug safety, commercial, whatever, PV. We pretty much hit all the value chain in the pharmaceutical industry. Our services on the top right-hand side there in the red, compliance, quality, process improvement, technology solutions, all that. So if you have any questions about it, we also have some brochures over there by the M&Ms, and we try to lure you into our marketing material, so at least somebody will pick it up and use it, and we don't have to throw it away. But so that's basically who we are. Today it's going to be really informal, so please just, if you have to get up, just get up. Again, network with your colleagues. We greatly appreciate it. Have a lot of fun today. If anybody wants to make a stupid joke while we're doing this, please do so. That'd be good. It's always good to be entertained. In terms of other events, so today it's a data visualization. We have another one. We have a bunch of webinars as well. Actually, I didn't pull them up. So we have webinars. We have we have a clinical trial management system built on the Microsoft platform with all the integration with that suite. So we do webinars in that. Webinars in data visualization. Resource management operations, there's a lot of requests these days around that. We have a tool we built to help with resource management. A lot around SharePoint, actually we have a Office 365. Are people moving to Office 365 at this point? Yeah, probably, yeah. So it's basically the Microsoft suite. Think of Office and all those applications and SharePoint in the cloud. That's where everything's moving. If you're not going there yet, you will be very soon, because we very much follow each other in the pharmaceutical industry. So it'll be happening in your organization very soon. So we actually have a workshop, a day conference coming up June 7th, I think. Yeah, June 7th, I got it right. I can't remember my kids' birthdays, but I remember that. So if you want to learn about Office 365, that would be a good one. For those kind of conferences, we basically get industry colleagues on the phone. They say what they want to learn about. They shape the agenda, all that. So it truly is an industry-led workshop. We're there basically to host and provide food. Sometimes people want a glass of wine or a beer at the end of the day too, so we'll provide that. But again, it's all pharma people just talking about their challenges. So those are some of the workshops we have there. If you could spread the word about that. That one's a little more expensive. It's like $175, I think, but it provides lunch and alcohol as well as the coffee and everything else. But it's basically, we're probably going to break even on that at best case scenario again. So again, we're trying to keep the costs low. So if you tell your colleagues about it, I greatly appreciate it. We've hosted, I don't know, maybe 15 SharePoint conferences over the years, so where people have gotten a lot of benefits from that. Oftentimes we'll have like a 4-hour open forum session where people just ask questions back and forth. That's been very popular and successful. So if you have a topic that you'd like a group of people to get together and you say, I'm struggling with something, and you want us to put together a forum for you, just reach out to us. We're more than happy to do that. We're always looking for areas where pharma's struggling and get a group of people like this together, and we try to bring it local. So if we hear a bunch of people in Boston or San Fran talking about something, we like to bring that to them, low cost. So just about anybody can attend. No vendors. We get a lot of phone calls and registrants for vendors, and we say, we're sorry you can't attend. This is pharma only. That's the way we market it, and we're going to stay true to that. So if you have a topic you're interested in that you think other industry members would like to know about and you would like to learn from, just let us know. We put something together. That's our new website, by the way, so our marketing people will be very happy to have that up there. In terms of today, so I'm going to be starting out and doing a presentation. I'm going to be talking about just the data mess in the pharmaceutical industry. Also some trends in BI that have come about and what your options are. And then Chris O'Donovan from Shire, he's going to be talking about some word I can't pronounce in the proclamation. So Chris and Jeff and I used to work together at Covan, so it's pretty cool. Always good to see those guys. And Jeff Kramer's the next presenter from Novo. He's going to be talking about data visualization stuff, showing a demo as well. And he talked here last year where he showed, what was it, Tableau, and what was the other tool he showed? Was it just Tableau? Just Tableau. So I'll actually get into some demos of the actual tools as well. So we'll probably take a break in between Jeff and Chris, but the agenda's kind of fluid. We have plenty of time. I think we have the room till like noon. So afterwards, if you want to have an open forum, we can do that and ask questions as well. So that's the rough outline of events there. Okay, so now I'm going to get into my part. I'm talking about outsourcing the clinical data mess. Now, some of the things I'm going to show here are clinical oriented, but it's really it's true of anywhere, whether you're in commercial, sales, pharmacovigilance, the same concepts apply, okay? So I'm talking about sort of the problem, which I'll state, and then recent trends, what are your options for solving the problem, and what's next in BI. So I want you to introduce you to a friend of mine named Bob. So Bob works at Acme Pharmaceuticals, right? And he's got a bit of a challenge, okay? Acme outsources clinical trials, right? And whether it be clinical trials again, whether it be PV, your outsourcing work there, whether it be the software or the people involved in PV, whatever it might be, but they outsource a lot of work, right? Most of you outsource clinical trials, right? I don't know of one company these days that does not outsource one trial. And not only that, they don't have one CRO, they have 3 CROs. And I think it's fair to say all of you have at least 3 CROs, pretty prevalent. Many of you have more than 10, okay? And so this is what their infrastructure looks like, right? You have 3 CROs, each of which have their own set of systems, each of which have their own data. Maybe some of you are big enough where you can get your CROs to use your systems, but still, many times, if not all the time, you have data all over the place and it's not in your firewalls, right? So to make this even more complicated, Acme, they have a pharmaceutical partner, right? Like most of you do as well, right? So it makes it even more complicated. You got more people, more systems, more data, more players, a big mess. Now I want you to meet Don Johnson, right? Our friend Bob reports to Don Johnson. He's Executive Vice President of R&D, and he asks a very simple question. He wants to see a dashboard, a portfolio. What do you say to Bob? They don't have the infrastructure set up yet. Bob's sitting there going, should I tell him I get it to him in a week, a month? Right? He's thinking in his head going, I got data all over the place, give him some Excel report. Then he might ask me to refresh it in a couple of weeks, and it takes me 2 or 3 weeks to even produce something, right? A lot of people have this challenge. Last fall, I was at a CBI industry conference, Clinical Systems Technology Marketplace. The title in there has a lot about tools, technology, systems, all that. The whole conference is about data. And in fact, Vertex Pharmaceuticals hosted this workshop here where we split into groups, and they gave everybody a challenge. They said, you have to produce a data warehouse of dashboards, okay, for clinical. Here are the constraints. You have CROs, okay, they have their own CTMS, EDC, IVR, all those systems, project management systems, and you have to produce some dashboards. And in red there, I circle, you have 12 to 18 months. I look at that and I go, 12 to 18 months. Are you going to sit there and tell Don Johnson, the EVP of R&D, it's going to take him a year to a year and a half to get him a report? To me, that just sounds absurd. When you think about how complex technology is these days, it's still taking us that long to do it. And for everybody in the room, that was acceptable. And I'm just sitting there like, how have we come to accept this? So the question is, well, Bob's job getting easier, right? Well, our job getting easier with this data mess. Well, Google, they estimate the world's data, 90% of it is created in the last 2 years. When you think about that, 2 years, 5 years from now, what's this going to change? Is it going to be 90% of the world's data is created in the last 2 months? The velocity of data, the volume of data, it is not slowing down. It is speeding up to just levels we don't even know how to deal with, right? When you look at outsourcing, outsourcing spend has been twice the growth rate of R&D spend in the last 20 years. So outsourcing is continuing to grow, and if you think about it, I'm sure everybody can relate to this. We're trying to keep fixed costs down. Outsourcing has become more and more prevalent. We're almost becoming, the pharmaceutical industry is almost becoming one company into itself with the amount of partners and outsourcing goes on. So this data mess, it's just going to get worse and worse, no question about it. So I always look at this and I say, well, if you want new results, you have to have a new mindset, right? You have to think about things differently. So here's what I'm gonna do. I just talked about part one, the data mess, okay? I'm gonna shift gears a little bit. I'm gonna start talking about recent trends in BI, or business intelligence, okay? I do a lot of reading in business intelligence, keep up some of this stuff. Some of you may as well, others may not know what's going on, but I think it's important to have some perspectives of what's happening in business intelligence these days. So if you remember back to like 2007, 2008, you had like Cognos business objects that have been around, you know, for a decade, if not longer, like these solutions, right? And they were purchased by large companies. And all of a sudden then the BI industry sort of, you know, they're asking themselves, now what, right? What's gonna happen now? And what was also happening was end users, business users, they were getting a little frustrated. And if you think back, say maybe 10 years ago, and even more recently it's 5, sort of this old school thought where if you wanted to roll out some BI tool, it was heavily governed, right? IT would get involved and they'd be like, okay, we're gonna structure this, we're gonna make sure we do it right, we're gonna get requirements gathering, it's gonna be centralized, it's gonna take, you know, X amount of days to build a report, it's gonna take a long time. That was the way it was done, right? And you had these business users come along going, you know what, I don't care about that stuff. There's some of these new tools like Tableau and Click that are starting to come around. I just want my reports. Or there's Don Johnson going, just give me the damn report, right? And so you have all these things coming around where users want to drag and drop type stuff. They want to be able to create the reports, not get on some list of, you know, IT projects that would take 3 years to get done. And then you had all this other stuff going on where they wanted stuff embedded in areas where they were playing, right? So if you're spending a lot of time in SharePoint, they want reports embedded in SharePoint. Because the typical user experience is they would be in a report, click, 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 get back to their work. They'd be in their work, oh, I need to see some report, click, 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 click. They're back to the report, right? That's not a good user experience. So there's been a big push for embedding BI where people work. The other thing that was happening a lot is, I like to use this cool word called mashing, right? So there's been a lot of mashing happening within BI. Social, for example, right? Companies are now doing smashing with BI and social and bringing them together. Same with search, same with collaboration, right? So all these things are starting to happen with this new school way of thinking, okay? So you had cognitive business objects being bought by some large companies. There's this new way of thinking, looking for new results, right? And so what happened was Tableau and Click, which many of you now know and heard about, and some of you have used, they started gaining a lot of popularity, sort of these new age tools, right, that fit that new school way of thinking. So you have these tools come along, and then the other thing that happened is there's a lot of investment money, you know, venture capital, whatever kind of investment, going into the BI space. So around 2008 timeframe, there's about $750 million that was being invested in the BI space, business intelligence companies. Went up to about 2013, went up to about $3 billion, right? Large, you see that spike there, the very end there, the blue line. Then what happened around 2015, you see a lot of these icons down here below, which you might not be able to read right here, but you have companies getting not just 5 million, 10 million, 30 million, 50 million, 100 million. Some companies got $450 million in investment, more than some biotech companies get in a lifetime. That's how much money is going there. It's well above $5 billion in investment now. So with all this investment, as well as people demanding new things, you'd hope that there'd be some sort of innovation that's going on there, right? How many people know about the Gartner BI Quadrant Report? Raise your hand. Okay, so I'll just talk about briefly. Gartner, they're like the gold standard, where they do surveys based on a variety of capabilities, one of which is business intelligence, right? So they had their 2015 Magic Quadrant, there's always all these buzzwords I gotta think of, business intelligence report came out. 2016, which is on the right-hand side, just came out, it was around March of this year. I'm kind of a dork with these things. They come out, old school, I print them out, I kill a couple of trees, I apologize, but I read through them many times. And I analyze the words they're saying, not just looking at the quadrants themselves. 2015, they started talking about these new age tools, right? Some of those buzzwords that I put up on the slide were embedded all throughout the report. In 2016, they came out and made a very deliberate statement in the opening report where they said, we've reached a tipping point. And what they said was, we reached a tipping point where these old school tools just don't cut it anymore. And some of them even fell off the Magic Quadrant, some of those big names. And they're saying, we are past the point where if you're not a new school tool, you're no longer relevant. Very few people are interested. So not only that, we went from 2015, if you look, you want to be up in the top right-hand quadrant there where it says 9 leaders. There's 9 leaders in 2015 in the BI report, Gartner one. Went down to 3 this year. And in particular, the one that Gartner really highlighted, which many of you don't know, is Microsoft. Who knows what the Microsoft tool name is? Anybody? Exactly, Power BI. Very few people know about Power BI. I looked at it a year and a half, 2 years ago, had some limited capabilities. Satya, who first became the CEO of Microsoft, that was the first release that he actually did for new products, was data visualization Power BI. And that's been one of the focuses of Microsoft. They do releases every month. I've been following for the last year and a half. It has jumped way up, like impressive. Like we use it a good bit, and there are things that come out where we don't even know they're there, and all of a sudden they're there in Power BI. It's that frequent. New releases are doing with it. It's a pretty impressive tool. Plus, there's another thing that I like about it a lot with Power BI. It's often associated with the F word. Free. It's free. They have a free version of it. There's also a paid, and you get some more benefits with the paid version. But even the paid version, it's only $10 per user per month. cheaper than Tableau, cheaper than Click, but the free part of it's more around some of how frequently it refreshes automatically from the database, but you can do an auto refresh if you want to, a manual one. But if you think about Office 365, if you've been there in the upper right-hand corner, you can click and you see a bunch of applications like Outlook, Calendar, things like that. Power BI is right there. So if you have Office 365, you don't even know it, you have Power BI. It's a pretty impressive tool. I definitely check it out. So they basically said we're down to 3 leaders, right, at this point. It's not to say that anybody else, none of those other tools will fit, but I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the trends there because I think it's interesting to point out some of these things. Now, the other thing I want to do is, sorry, I mentioned down here some of these companies, those logos. I just want to point a couple of them out and some things that are happening. So in the top left up there, ClearStory, you think about mashing. So what they're doing is they're mashing up social and business intelligence. So take, for example, you see Texas up there, it went darker from one picture to the next, whatever, it increased in sales, whatever it is. You basically do is you click on Texas, and on the right-hand side, there's like that Yammer news feed or Yammer kind of approach, and you basically type in comments on the report. So new users come in, they can see your thoughts in that report instead of doing our favorite thing, emailing everybody, right? So it basically says, let's get rid of email, let's put all our thoughts right into the tool itself and make it social, right? Pretty interesting concept. On the right-hand side, Domo, they're using card technology. So think of a user as they come, they have a canvas, any user, and they can basically drag and drop card technology very easily, which would create their own dashboard within dashboards. ThoughtSpot, a very interesting one. I saw a demo of them going back a year and a half, 2 years ago, and they're mashing up search and BI. So their approach is they want to think of it in terms of Google, right? Google, it's, you have any thought, you type it in, it returns results for you. They want to do the same thing with BI. So say, for example, if you want to know the top 10 key investigators in oncology, you type it in, and it returns a graph. No predefined reports, nothing. Now you sit there and you go, okay, well, how's this possible? How do they do that? Let me let you know a little secret here. I have no idea. I'd love to know. I asked them a couple times, they wouldn't say anything, but when you think about structure and cubes and data and all that stuff, it's hard to get your head around that concept. So they've got a tremendous amount of investment, but it's a pretty neat idea where it's like, don't tell us what your requirements are, just tell us what your question is. We'll return a graph. Another one, Intrinsic, they're basically integrating the Microsoft stack with BI in clinical and pharma industry. So you think about Outlook integration, SharePoint integration, Excel integration, Power BI, CRM Dynamics, all that stuff, right? So all that's being integrated and mashed up, okay? So there's some examples of some recent companies creating innovation. It's not just about BI, it's about BI plus all the other things we do, right? And that's where it's headed. So the question becomes, we talked about the clinical data mess, right? We talked about recent trends in BI. When you start to put those things together, you say, what are your options? I just want to show you some things that, some of the requests we get pretty often from companies in the last year or so. So drug development, again, this could be in commercials, sales, PV, wherever. Same kind of concept. Data is really complex, okay? It comes in many forms. It's not just numeric date ranges. You got images, you got all kinds of stuff. But even when you get that data, just the data alone by itself is not as meaningful. Many times, you have to create metrics upon metrics to make the story more relevant. Many times, you need to take data that is, we talked about, outside your firewalls and bring it together. Or you're missing some data, you need some input layer, bring it together. So data gets to be pretty complex, right? So one way to think about the architecture then is, for example, we talked about if we had 3 CROs here, and I'm just making those names up, I'm making no comments about companies here, just logos for examples. I always have to say that. If you got data all over the place, right, which you mentioned before, so you have all your clinical systems, there are a couple things you do. One is many times people are spending a good bit of time on APIs. There's a company called Scribe out there which helps with, in the cloud, and creating APIs a lot more easily. The other part is the data tier layer, which is a really critical part. This is where you can spend most of your time in your project. So structuring the data, mapping out so that it's reusable, so you basically pull out a system, put another one in. Very, very important to get that layer right. That's where you're going to spend a lot of your time. And I would even argue, and I know this is sort of a selfish plug for consulting companies, but The more you do this, the better you get at it, the faster you get at it. And if you're just doing it one time for your own company, it's going to take you 12 to 18 months. There's a lot of things you can learn from data and reuse in that data tier layer. And then you'll be able to produce your reports up top, right? I don't care what tool you use, honestly, and I don't think, frankly, anybody really should. I mean, the way tools are these days and our requirements and needs around BI, they're almost one and the same. There's some that are easier to use than others, and some that are slightly better, but a lot of the tools are fairly similar. So if you use a Tableau, Power BI, Click, whatever, to me that doesn't really matter so much. It's that data tier layer which is the most important piece. So I want to show you some examples from clients that requests that we get fairly often these days. So one is business intelligence study management. So many times clients are asking, like, okay, we have data all over the place, but then we also have missing data. So many times clients these days are asking us about an input layer. So structuring forms, okay, so you can put it together with data from, you might have in your systems already, from CROs to be able to produce the reports you need. Very important concept. So as your organization's fluid, sometimes it's easier just to produce forms and structure your data, right? So that's one important part of it. The other one is some other companies have been asking us, you know, we want to get data in from our partners, but we want to sort of mash up the business intelligence along with workflow and forms. So as the data comes in, we want study managers, program managers, other people like that to review the data for quality and approve it. And then upon that approval, workflow kicks off and the reports automatically compile the data and reports, and it gets sent to the executives to review each month. Okay, so there's an example there. Another one is around collaboration. So we're getting a good bit of requests these days. I mentioned about the user experience, right? So you're in a report in BI and you got the study name right there. You can click on the study name itself and up pops the study portal. And then from the study portal you go back to BI, right? Or you can actually embed the reports right within it. So a lot of requests we've been getting is around making sure that the navigation is very easily, you can easily get back and forth between what somebody's doing in BI. Another one's coming up often is operational tools. So many companies these days, they don't want to spend millions of dollars in enterprise tools, and whether it be for an enterprise need or a function. So they're asking us to put together some tools with BI, so things say around resource management, where you're collecting this data or you're pulling the data and you're embedding the reports right within SharePoint. And being able to produce operational tools are right where people play, so it's relevant for them and right there. A lot of requests we're getting for that these days. Okay, so we talked about data problem, recent trends in BI, some examples of clients have been asking us for. I want to shift gears a little bit, okay? I want to talk about, try to open minds up a little bit and think about data a little bit differently. Okay, so you just bear with me in this section. It's going to seem like I'm jumping all over the place, because I am. But in the end, I'm going to bring it back to data visualization and how we, as a group interested in data and business intelligence, should be thinking about how we should be talking to our colleagues, okay? So this is what a BI project often looks like. You got an enterprise person at the top there saying, you know what, we have an enterprise deal with Tableau, you have to use Tableau or Click or whatever, right? That's their job. You got an e-clinical systems person saying, our friend Bob, of course, and Bob is saying, you know what, we need to standardize our data, right? And then you got a study manager going, damn it, I just need to meet my timelines. You got an executive saying, where's my report for my portfolio? That's what I need, right? Pretty much everybody here has those kind of people or roles in the organization expressing their needs. Below the dotted line there, you may have somebody like a data scientist. Some of you may, some of you may not. And they're just saying, you know what, I want more data. I want to get my hands on more data. And then possibly even fewer of you might have somebody which I call an innovator, and they're going, you know what, we got to think differently to survive, okay? So each of these people is looking through a lens of what their needs are with respect to data and business intelligence. So let's take Acme Pharmaceuticals, right? I put their logo in the middle there, which I made up, which I'm very proud of, which I later learned that actually that company exists, and I was like, you know what, I'll just put it up anyway. So this is my fictitious company, Acme Pharmaceuticals. Put up 4 quadrants here, because that's the thing to do, 4 quadrants, why not? I'm going to walk through each one of these, and the question is, what path should Acme Pharmaceutical take, right? So the bottom left here, it's called the status quo. And this often happens with a lot of biotech companies we work with. They're sort of saying, you know what, I don't care about business intelligence. Just let the CROs handle it. You give me a report, I don't care if I get 10 different kinds of reports, defined differently, different formats and all that in Excel. Just let the CROs handle it, we're gonna deliver on our pipeline. And that's absolutely fine. And if you pick that path and go with it, that's great, but you gotta pick a path, right? You have some companies that might say, which I sort of call the incremental approach in the bottom right, which is very, very important. But they're looking at going, you know what, we have too many studies in our pipeline, we need to understand status better, get a hold of it. We're gonna put together this data architecture, and we're gonna understand what's going on with our portfolio, okay? Which is a great step, very much needed, but I still call it incremental. In the top left, you have many companies out there that I see often. They're trying to do the incremental approach, putting in a data architecture. It's not working well for bad data problems, quality, refresh, people not understanding it, whatever, but they're failing at it. So what happens is they go back to where they used to be, where they say they get reports from CROs, right? So they're not doing either one very well. What happens is people spend a tremendous amount of time as their job, and there are a lot of hidden costs there, scrubbing data, trying to produce reports, very, very, very costly. It happens in far too many companies, okay? I'd rather see companies take this approach than take the one up above, okay? What I want to do is I want to think about and say, okay, let's think about the visionaries. What would they be saying in the top right? They'd be saying, you know what? Our model's broken. We need to change. We need to take some risks. They're more calculated, but we need to do that because we need to be successful, okay? They're thinking about it a little differently. And the way they're thinking about it is these three red boxes here, they're looking at the same measures, and as a result of that, they're often getting the same results, okay? And the green there, the visionaries, they're thinking about it differently and saying, we need different results. This is not working, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. As a result, we need to measure different things, right? They're thinking about it differently. So, put it another way, our business model is broken. I firmly believe that. When I say our business model, the way we deliver medicines to patients is broken. And I think, even if you disagree with me to a certain extent, I think people would still agree to a certain extent that we need to change, okay? For example, Forbes Freshness Index, this just came out in March 2016. So Forbes did this analysis about a dozen large pharmaceutical companies. This does not include specialty pharma, biotech, some mid-pharmas. It's an example, okay? But I think one that's very relevant. So this Freshness Index, they said, of the NMEs that have been approved in the last 5 years, what are we spending in R&D at that time, and how much revenue are we getting from those approved medicines, right? Here are the numbers right here. $75 billion spent per year for these dozen large pharmaceutical companies. And they get, was it $37 billion back? So I have a question for you. If I say to you, you know what, there's an investment that you can go into. You give me $75, right? And in a year, I'm gonna give you 37 back. How many people would do that? No one, no one, but yet we continue to do this. So Forbes looks at this, they call it the Freshness Index, which I think is a good way to put it. And so the question is, you know, we need to change the way we work, the way we deliver medicines to patients. Let's talk about the evolution of how we work, the remote worker. 10, 20 years ago, how many people frequently worked at home? Not too many. Now they're almost pushing you out the building, right? I forget who I was talking to earlier. They said their CEO even has a cube, right? At some point, we're almost going to get rid of buildings, or the amount, you know, we'll have, whatever, 25,000 people in a company, a pharmaceutical company, you might have 5,000 seats in a building. I mean, that's just the way it's going. We've changed the way we work, yet we might not have even realized it. And we changed that because people wanted it to change, right? And also, we wanted lower costs. We didn't want to have as many buildings, right? Let's take another example. How many people have been to, say, an urgent care, Walgreens Health Clinic? Raise your hand. How many people have been to them? Okay? Lower your hands. How many people liked it? Raise your hand. Love it. I love it, right? I don't even like going to a doctor's office, and I love going there. Quality service, it's fast, right? Talk about value for your time and the care, it's great. And I look at this and I go, some of you might be old enough to have gray hair, and you remember when the doctor used to come to you in your home. I'm making fun of myself because I have a little bit of gray hair, especially when it gets longer, a lot more gray comes out. But that doctor used to come to your home, and then all of a sudden they went to, you know what, we need to go to the doctor's office now, right? And now we're sitting there going, how many people like going to the doctor's office? You sit there for an hour, full of germs in a building. I can't stand it. It's the most annoying thing ever, right? We changed the way we work here, and it kind of happened subtly. And I look at that and I go, that's kind of interesting. How many people have worked in a clinical trial without a patient going to a doctor's office? Raise your hand. How many people have heard of the word patient engagement? Raise your hand. So I love the way we talk about this buzzword, patient engagement these days, patient centricity and all that stuff. When we don't even like going to the doctor's office, but we're asking them to go to a doctor's office, visit 1, visit 2, visit 3, all that stuff, right? Like an episodic event is happening, we're going to manage their healthcare, their disease symptoms, because of one stinking visit to a doctor's office. It's ridiculous. We deal with diseases 24 hours a day, every second, not just going to a doctor's office. I think this is the most ridiculous thing. And this is what I say, it's not only the model of the Forbes Freshness Index, I think the way we look at patients and the way we generate data has to change. I mean, I think if you Google clinical trial, right, and you look at it, a result from like the 1950s, pretending the internet's, you know, around back then, we deliver clinical trials the same way we did 50 years ago. And there's good reason for that, right? There's a lot of precedents set, the FDA and other health authorities require it, you know, patient grade data, all that stuff, you need control. But we're so caught up in that we're unwilling to change, because oftentimes with change you see many barriers, and there's a lot of them, there's no doubt about it. But the question is, you know, are we evolving at all? I want to change topics here a little bit, okay? I'm going to shift industries. How many people have heard of Zebra Technologies? What's that?
Printers?
No, nope. I was shocked if you haven't heard of it. Zebra Technologies, a partner with the NFL, National Football League. Last year, every NFL player had a sensor in their shoulder pads. Okay? The NFL, are they making a lot of money? Exactly. Okay? They necessarily don't need a change. I mean, you could argue for concussions and all that, fine, but from a financial perspective, incredibly lucrative, right? But they're still saying, you know what? We should measure different things so we can get better results, right? So imagine if you got a sensor in every football player's pads, what you could do, what you could measure, right? It could be some pretty interesting things. Anybody remember this? You watch the Super Bowl? Next Gen Stats? They would show this stuff at the Super Bowl. That's what it came from. And they showed average speed of player. They showed stats like how long it took from a defensive lineman, defensive end, to go from when the ball was snapped to get to the quarterback. Very important measure, right? Other ones, how quickly once the quarterback got the ball till they released the ball. A very important measure, right? And you could say, well, you know, we've had that stuff before. You know, how fast players run. You know, people are in practice and they, you know, they got their stopwatch out and they run the 40-yard dash and click 4.6 seconds, you know, whatever. Sure, but that's a one-time event. Where's the continuous data? So with Zebra Technologies, they're able to say this player averaged this amount of speed throughout the whole game, looking at every play. Every play. You start to say to yourself, wow, what can we do with that data, right? What can we do with that data? Well, how much data is it? 1.69 billion sets of data for XY coordinator, which is 68 billion bits of player positioning. 68 billion. So think about it. What could you do with that data? You're working in the NFL, you're in a team, around it. What would you do with it? What, any thoughts?
Who to trade, who to try to get in the trade.
What's that?
Who to trade and
Who to trade, yeah, that's a good one.
Who to try to get in the trade.
Yep, what else?
Fatigue.
Yep, fatigue, that's a good one.
Contract negotiations.
Ooh, I like that one. I'm an agent, right? I'm sitting there going, wow, my player just had a good year. I pull up this data, let's take Cam Newton, right? Just had a good year. I want to go back to the Carolina Panthers, say he's a top 3 quarterback, I want top 3 money. I can show when he's been against opponents and how quick the pass rush was, how quickly he got rid of the ball, how he avoided sacks, how he avoided turnovers. Pretty good negotiation tool, right? What about gambling? Like that one, huh? You like to gamble, imagine what you can do with that data, right? You're the Philadelphia Eagles, the stinking Cowboys are coming to town. Would you like to have access to their data? The left cornerback, second down, takes off. Every second down, he doesn't hustle that much, right? You get to play 2nd and 2, I'm going long, right? You could do some pretty neat things with that data. Who knows what this is? Apple Research Kit. Okay, Apple, a little over a year ago, released Apple Research Kit. Open source platform, okay? In there they have things that people could use like us. They have templates built for informed consent, procedures, things like that, so you can conduct studies on it, right? Stanford University, they use Apple Research Kit for a cardiovascular study. 11,000 patients enrolled in 24 hours. Thinking about working differently. They said it would take 50 medical centers to do that. Think of the cost of that, the cost difference. Think of the time saved. Think about if you're asking a patient to go to a medical center or they're at home doing their visit, right? You want to talk about patient engagement, making it more convenient? It's interesting. Let's talk another one here. Say if you use Apple Research Kit, right, for observational study, right? Let's say, for example, I'm in a pharma company, Acme Pharmaceuticals, right? I'm Don Johnson, and I go, wow, we have this topical cream here. We got a phase 3 trial coming up, patients who have some sort of skin irritation, right? I'm about to spend $100 million in a phase 3 pivotal trial. $100 million, right? And we're designing the protocol, and there's assumptions we're putting in the protocol. And let's say, you know, I'm a physician and I go, you know what, I'm an expert in this space. I know for a fact, patients, they scratch about 5 times a night, right? That's just what they do. Another way, another physician could look at it and go, or people involved in writing protocol say, you know what, I think I know, but let's do a survey, right? Let's use something like SurveyMonkey or some other tool, and then we'll ask patients how often they scratch at night, right? Good assumptions? Yeah, how often do you know if you actually scratch your arm at night if you have a skin irritation, right? Or you could do observational study with Research Kit, spend about $50,000 to $100,000, validate your assumptions before spending $100 million. Get some different kind of data, right? This example I just gave is an example from a top 10 pharmaceutical company. They actually did this. In the end, when they did this study, they found that their assumption was completely wrong. It was actually 10 times the amount that they assumed. Okay? So thinking about drug development differently and thinking about some of this technology and data and getting your hands on new kinds of data, you know, it's pretty neat, but you got to think differently about it. Apple Research Kit, they also, this was March 22nd, they have a partnership now with 23andMe. What's 23andMe? Anybody know 23andMe?
It's a genetic analysis company?
Yep, genetic analysis for personal genetics, right? So they're looking to mine genetics with Apple Research Kit. What do you get from it? Well, in the red here, you have large amounts of data gathering from an iPhone, which is probably going to go to other phones as well, and understanding how factors like environment, geography, and all those kind of things, the influence they have with genes and disease progression. That's a lot of data. And think about the different kinds of things you could do with it. In us, you know, working the data space, business intelligence, imagine getting your hands on some of this data, right? Think about things differently. CenterWatch, this is in August 2015, so GSK did this study, right? Where they want to do a pilot project and evaluate whether mHealth type technology, sensors, mobile phones, all that stuff, can produce reliable FDA compliant data. Okay? They just want to prove out the concept, right? Which was great, because that's, talk about hurdles, right? That's one of the things you need to get over. So here's health pads. They collect things in respiration, posture, heart rate, and all that stuff, right? The thing that's interesting about it is they gather continuous data. 18 million data points per patient per day, right? I presented this about a month ago at another conference. We got in a little bit of heated, interesting discussion with a very senior level person in the pharmaceutical industry and data management. And they're like, well, what do you even need with this data? It's not even helpful. And I think that's a perfect example of how we're thinking about drug development, so old school and different in just the same way. Right? He's saying only collect the data that you need, which is true. A lot of data management people think that way, to prove out your hypothesis. And I'm looking at it and going, why are we thinking about data in terms of most often being when they go to a doctor's visit? It should be continuous. If you have continuous data, you can better understand disease progressions in patients, things like that. Continuous data is really where we need to be in the pharmaceutical industry and drug development, in my opinion. So think about if you had your hands in that much data, what you could do with BI. The last example here, this one I like a lot, is my favorite. So this is April, this came out. Pfizer, partnership with IBM, okay? Really cool house, I want to live in this house. Up in the top right, they have a research facility that looks like a regular home. Patients are gonna live there. They're gonna conduct a study as a pilot. Except the home has this network of hundreds of sensors, right? So patients are gonna be there, they're gonna be collecting real time, real life, not just some event where you go to a doctor's office. It's gonna be continuous, so they look at disease symptoms, right? So they're trying to break the barriers down and get rid of this, what they're calling, and I love these words, revolutionizing episodic healthcare. You have an episode, let's take some measurements, let's figure it out. It's a bunch of BS, right? Disease progression happens every day. So doing something like this, you not only be able to measure people every day, but have it continuous, have it be real life. So what they're measuring is things like motor function, cognition, sleep, activities, grooming, all that stuff, eating. IBM's coming into play, we're looking at machine learning. So how can we take all this data and understand everything we're measuring with disease progression, right? What can you do with that data, right? Perfect example last night, my son's got allergies, right? The way home from soccer practice, we're at a Kiernan, right? And I don't like giving myself or kids, this is probably bad to say, medicine. I just don't like ingesting too much of it. Don't go tell anybody outside the room, but. So I'm looking at Kiernan and I'm like, okay, last time I got it for him, he responded really well to children's Kiernan. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get that. And I'm like, wait a minute, so he's 11 years old, does he need children's Kiernan? So I get the adult version, 10 milligrams versus the children's 5 milligrams. And on the adult one, it says 6 and up, you take it once per day, 10 milligrams. So you're looking at somebody who's 6 years up through any age, and they get the same dose. It's kind of silly if you think about it. 10, 20 years, we're gonna look back and go, wow, how could we look at that? So what IBM Pfizer's trying to figure out is things like, how can we use the right sensors, so they're testing all these sensors, so we can do things like getting the right dosing, understanding better disease progression, things like that, right? So if you think about it now and you say, okay, we're in this room, we have an interest in data, business intelligence. If you were doing something like this for a study, think about how much data you could have. And on top of that, I think you would think about your role a little bit differently, right? I think the coolest thing about this is, because all this technology's been around pretty prevalent since about 2007 timeframe roughly, healthcare startups, way beyond us in the pharmaceutical industry. The stuff they're doing has been pretty damn cool in the last 10 years or so. Pharmaceutical industry, we haven't even scratched the surface. This technology's out there, but we haven't been using it. Why? Because there's hurdles and people are taking steps to try to figure out those hurdles so we get access to more data and frankly change the way we do drug development. And the coolest thing that Pfizer said is right down here. It says they're planning to use this research facility for one of their phase 3 compounds in 2019. They came out and said that in public, which is really cool because basically what that says, you know what? We need to change the way we're working, right? We need to make it easier for patients. We need to get more data, real life data. It has to be continuous. And we're going to use that to deliver medicines in a better way. That's basically what they're saying, and we're going to force ourselves to do it by giving a date and a compound. To me, that is a very impressive statement. Because when you look at the way you change work, there's so much precedent with drug development and clinical trials. It's holding us back right now. It's holding us back from us getting our hands on data so we can do a lot of neat things with business intelligence, right? So when you look at, we talked about these people before and the way they do their jobs. The one thing I'd say is, it's one of those things for me now. I'd really like to change the pharmaceutical industry, the way we think about this. If you go back, you talk to your colleagues, and you're in a discussion like this, where you have the enterprise person, the study manager, whoever, thinking about data and business intelligence relative to their needs, it needs to stop. Because that's holding us back from doing our job. Those BI tools out there can do way more than we're actually requiring of it. If we had more data, if we changed the way we work, I think we'd solve a lot of problems for patients in the pharmaceutical industry. And frankly, I think our job would be a hell of a lot more fun. I mean, think about how many reports you create the same report over and over and over and over. If we had this much data, different kinds of data, we'd be exploring it constantly. It would be pretty cool. So that's my spiel. If you have any questions, if not, we can go ahead and start with the next presenter. Any questions at all? Or? Let's see here. Jeff, who's up next? Jeff? Chris?
Chris. Question, Matt, when you showed that sort of slide and then next, what's the story to change that? I mean, I can see it.
Which one, Pfizer?
No, just those sort of barriers you just mentioned at the end of your speech there. You said, hey, here's all those.
Yep.
What do you think the drivers are to change all that? I mean, is it money? Is it the fact the industry is shrinking, so therefore they have to like
Well, money will always push it, to me, but you need to get around the risk of putting our assets at risk. So it's got to be somebody who sits in the enterprise versus somebody who manages an asset. Because many times, why would they take that risk in their portfolio for their asset?
It's a structural problem.
Yeah, so it's got to be somebody that's not responsible for a compound, in my opinion. Maybe they can do it as a one-off, and that would be great. But oftentimes those people won't take the risk. So I think it's got to be somebody who's saying, you know what, I'm an innovation type person. Let's get somebody who might be managing a compound who's a little more innovative and think about it differently and say, you know what, if I'm partnering with somebody from enterprise, so that sort of the VPC level suite would say it's okay to take a risk in this compound, now you got some buy-in and you're able to take that risk. But companies, they're just starting to do that. I mean, it's, even things like adherence, which are a very easy ROI. You get people to take your medication more often, you're getting more money. Even doing things like that has been a challenge to try to get people to adopt this kind of stuff for adherence. So to me, I think it's more of, it's going to be money, it's going to be compliance. We're going to be slowly chipping away at some of these barriers. It's not going to be done overnight. It's going to take a long time, but we need to head there. So.
Do you want to just give him a couple minutes to take a bio break?
Yeah, you guys want to take 5?
Want to take 5?